What is the mindset of a protector? One thing alone can make the difference between failure and success: your mindset. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, security, and executive protection. Tune in every week where we look in the mirror to make real changes and learn how to achieve greatness by tapping into the Sentinel mindset. This episode is brought to you by The Arena. The Arena focuses on helping law enforcement and security professionals achieve their ultimate work experience, curriculum, and fitness goals. Visit thearenatoronto.com. Have you ever wondered what your life will be at the age of 80, 90? Do you think you'll even get to that age? It's something that you should really be paying a lot of attention to. I mean, you might be thinking, hey, I'm 25, 30. Do I even want to think about that? You should, because everything that you're doing to your system right now, whether the food that you're eating or the exercise that you may not be doing, the lack of sleep, all these things are a contributing factor to the life longevity that you may have. My guest coming up is Kevin Brady. He is the CEO and founder of Advica Health. Kevin has been a game changer for me. And I mean, I've been reading his book, It's Never Too Late to Be Healthy. Fantastic book. We're gonna dive into this. We're gonna dive in so you can find out what you can do to change your life and to give you that longevity. Next on the Sentinel Mindset. All right, Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this amazing, amazing day today. As we get closer and closer to spring, I thought it'd be such an amazing opportunity to bring on this, I'm gonna call him a life game changer guest for myself. And I feel that what I absorbed when I met him and what I read in his book, I had to share this. And today, our very special guest today is Kevin Brady from Advica Health. How are you doing today?
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Amazing, man. I'm so glad you're here. And just to dive right in, I'm part of a forum group, the McKay Forum Group, and that's been a game changer for me as well. And every 2 months, we will have a speaker that comes on board. And we heard that there was a speaker coming named Kevin Brady, and he was going to be talking about like some health. And that's all the extent of it was. I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm healthy. I mean, I have my protein shakes. I work out. What am I going to like, in my mind, that's what's going through my mind, Kevin. Like, what am I really going to get from here, right?
Yeah. And that happens often. Often when I say I'm going to talk about health, people think, oh, he's going to talk about, sleep more and eat better and that type of thing, right?
That's right.
And then I'd love to hear what you came away with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for the record, I'm 46 years old, turning 47 in a couple of months. But I'll say this conversation opened up Pandora's box for me. It's like it opened up the world. And the interesting thing about it is that a lot of the stuff that you spoke about were things that I've heard throughout my life, but just never paid attention to them whatsoever. So when you started talking about how to look at your health, how to look at your eating, what you should be having in there, things that you could be doing to better your health, having a team, which you referenced in your book, a team that from your doctors to your nutritionists to all these things, like what all these just started to connect. And I started to read your book. And for those that might be wondering what the book's called, It's Never Too Late to Be Healthy, Reaching Peak Health in Middle Age. The first question that came up when I was talking about this is, what is considered to be middle age these days?
Great question. Years ago, people would have said probably 30 to 50. But, now as I get older, I consider middle age to be 50 to 80 is kind of middle age, like right. Middle. That's kind of the middle chapter of our life. And, as you know, and you heard me speak, I mean, my goal is longevity, but not just longevity, healthy longevity.
That's right. You don't want to be 80 years old and like struggling to walk or pain in every step you make.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. When I speak to large audiences, one of the questions I ask is, who wants to live to be 100? Right? And well, you guess what percentage of people would put up their hand that want to live to 100?
I'm going to probably say, I would assume it would be high, but I'm going to assume based on when people think 100, thinking, oh my God, I'm decrepit, I'm old, I can't walk. I don't think there'd be a high chance that people would say that.
Yeah, so it's very low. It's usually like 10 to 20%.
Okay.
And then I rephrase the question and I said, okay, let me rephrase the question. And let's say you're 100 and you can walk and you can hike and you can hop on a plane and you can play with your grandkids or great grandkids and you're vital and vibrant and everything else. Now who wants to live to be 100? And you literally get 100% of people putting up their hands,
wow.
right? Because people, unfortunately, we look at our parents and grandparents and great grandparents, and what they've had to endure in, I'll say, the last third of their life, and many of them are surviving. They aren't living, they're surviving, right? They're kind of in survival mode and maybe in nursing homes or hospital, or it's so a lot of people don't want to look forward to that. And in my book, I refer to the blue zones, which we talked a bit about at the meeting that you attended. And for those that aren't aware, blue zones are places in the world where people exponentially live longer than anyone else, but not just longer, long and healthy. And it actually, the term came from a great individual who I've met, is Dan Buettner, who wrote the book called Blue Zones. And he's made it as my life's work now to look at these different blue zones around the world and identify what are they doing different than the average person, right? To live long and healthy. In many instances, over 100 years of age.
Interesting. There's a documentary on Netflix right now. I think it's called Live to 100. I think it's called.
That's his documentary.
That's his documentary. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think I only got to the point where they were focusing on Japan, right?
Oh, okay.
I'm going a little bit deep into that.
And I visited Sardinia. I've been fortunate to be in I guess 4 or 5 years of a bike race there in Sardinia. So I made it a point, my son and I, Tim, who we went and visited one of these blue zones, and it's amazing. Like, people are like, first of all, they honor the elderly, right? They have these. We went in this church, and they actually had pictures of people that were over 100 years old, and you see them, and they're walking up these like mountainous, streets and villages, and they're working their farms. They aren't on a treadmill, right? They aren't hitting a treadmill or an elliptical or whatever. They're just moving every day. They're eating off the land. They're eating non-processed food, and they're happy. It's so good to see. Like, if ever anybody gets a chance to visit one of these blue zones, I would encourage you to, because it's super motivating.
Okay. What I love about, and I'm gonna just keep tapping up to my experience when it started. I want to say, like, my new chapter of life starts with you, Kevin.
Wow.
And I'll tell you this, because if I go back to December, and now we're just sitting about 3 months later, what are some changes that I've applied to my life based on what I read in your book, in our conversation, and how it's changed me? That's something that I think you should hear, because it's like I'm a living life testimony here. So what I've changed is, first of all, there's a thing in the book called the Wilson Shake, okay? And with the Wilson Shake, Kevin, why don't you explain the Wilson Shake?
Okay, so can I back up to why I even did the Wilson Shake?
Okay, you know what, the origin story. It's very important that people understand the transformation. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so I'll back up to a couple origin stories or kind of my health journey, because I think a lot of us have faced this. So bottom line is, I took my health for granted, right? And I had just started a business at the time. I had 3 children under 8. I'm going back to 1999 right now. So I ask, think of where you were in your life in 1999. So I was 36 years old, had 3 kids under the age of 8, had just started a business. So a lot of stress, anxiety, wasn't sleeping. But I thought, as long as I worked out every day, I'd be good, right? As long as I worked out. Well, I'd done a bunch of running and ran marathons. And in May 1999, went in a marathon. It was a little warmer that day, but after the race, I wasn't feeling good. And I went to the medical tent, and I talked to the medical director. I don't know, have you ever done an endurance event like that? No. So they have a medical tent set up, and I went after, and the medical director looked at me, took my heart rate, took my blood pressure, and he said, "Kev, you're fine, go home." And fortunately, because I had run 4 other marathons previously, typically you're recovering super quick, right? And I wasn't. I was actually getting worse and going south. And my wife even backed up our SUV for me to get in, climb in it at the finish line. And I didn't go. I said, I got to stay here. I'm just not feeling well. And she was taking our other 2 children to a recital. And I said, you go ahead and then come back and get me. And I just kept going, feeling worse and worse. And when people say, how did you feel? And I don't know if you've had a near-death experience, but I actually felt like I was dying. That feeling, like I thought, this is not going well. And I was guzzling Gatorade and everything else. Anyway, so I went to the medical tent, and last thing I remember is demanding an ambulance. And then they, from what I read, they gathered me up and helped me into the ambulance. And then I went unconscious. and I ended up in a coma on full life support. So I had machines keeping me alive, like a ventilator and a respirator, keeping me alive. And I was in a full coma. They actually shipped me off to a specialty hospital, and they told my wife, Barb, that I had less than a 10% chance of living. And obviously I woke up because I'm here. But
you're thinking, by the way, at this point, you're thinking, I'm healthy. What's going on here?
Totally healthy. I thought, you know what? I work out every day. I thought I was eating reasonably well. And and then I ended up in a coma. And for years I blamed the heat and blamed some other things. But when I look back, I was fit, but I wasn't healthy. Right? I wasn't paying attention to my sleep. I wasn't paying attention to my diet. I wasn't paying attention to my mental health. I thought as long as I work out every day. So part of what I write about in my book, as you know, and I talk about is we can't take our health for granted, especially by only focusing on one aspect of our health. Right. And I get into that in my book. As you know, I talk about the wheels of health. So anyways, after that, I recovered and I was building my business and went back to what I thought was a pretty healthy life. And I would go for an executive medical every year. Have you ever been for an executive medical?
I haven't, but I definitely have one planned. I did a full body scan, which we're going to get into.
Okay.
But I 100% looking at doing one, and I think the Cleveland Clinic is one of them that offers that.
Yes. Yeah, there's a number that we can help you navigate towards. But so I would go every year for my executive medical. And for those that have had them or haven't had them, it's basically you go in and it's a full day of testing and blood tests and heart and ultrasound and everything else. It's a great idea if you haven't had one, just to kind of get a full picture of your health. So I would go every year, and typically for those that have been, the month before, you watch what you eat, you don't drink any alcohol, and then you go have your medical, and every year the tests come back reasonable, and because they say you're kind of in the neutral zone, so everything's good, and then you throw it in a drawer and kind of do the next thing the next year. Well, 10 years after my marathon incident, I went again for my executive medical, and this time the doc came out and said, he said, Kev, I got to put you on some scripts, some prescriptions. And I said, and I was shocked, and I said, for what? He said, you have high cholesterol, you have high blood pressure, you're 50 pounds overweight, and you're diabetic, right? And I was shocked.
Wow.
And so, two things that stick out. I asked him, I said, well, when did this, why all of a sudden I haven't done anything different during the last year? I've been eating the same, everything else. And he pulled out my chart, and this is really interesting. He pulled out my chart and said, oh no, Kev, over the last 5 years, all these levels have been increasing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, why wouldn't you tell me? Mm-hmm. And he said, because you weren't in the danger zone, right? So it wasn't, when you get your blood tests and
yes.
they say, you're in the normal range.
Right.
And now those normal ranges keep increasing, unfortunately. So none of my readings were outside of that, so everything was good,
okay.
right? But meanwhile, if he had told me 4 or 5 years earlier that my blood levels were creeping up or my sugar levels or whatever, I would have done something about it. So anyways, I begged him, I said, give me 3 months. I said, I'm going to move things around or change my life around. And he kind of rolled his eyes, as you know, and because he's heard this a million times. And I said, seriously, give me 3 months. I'm going to change things around, because I thought it was a wake-up call for me. So I went home that evening, and I shared with my wife what had happened. And she had just engaged a nutritionist. And as you know, I'm a huge proponent of nutritionists. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to follow her program, right? So, and part of her program was a morning shake, which brings us to the Wilson Shake. Yes. So part of that program was a shake, and it was like start your day every day with a full-on healthy shake. So the reason I call it Wilson Shake is we had a dog that lived to be 19 years old named Wilson. And every day, and even this morning I had my shake, every day pretty much since then, and I say pretty much because it's 6-7 days a week, I start my day with the Wilson Shake.
Right.
And every morning I'd press my Vitamix blender, and Wilson would hear the blender and
Which
rush
is loud.
rush over
Yeah.
and start lapping up my shake. So everybody says, well, of course your dog lived to be 19 years old, because he had the Wilson Shake. He had the shake every morning. So I named it after him. He's passed on since, but he, I don't know if it was just that, but I'm sure it had something to do with it. Right?
For sure. Yeah. And the Wilson Shake, for those listening, is so from what I remember, what's in the Wilson Shake, because these are the things that I put now in my shake. So obviously a protein, right? And isolate protein. I know you have plant-based protein in there.
Yeah, plant-based protein or amino acids. Yeah.
Right. Some frozen fruits like strawberries or berries.
Yep, frozen fruits. And again, I'll just clarify, as much as I can, I buy all organic.
Yes.
Right? Without the pesticides and all. So organic, like if I can, 100% of the time.
Right. And then these are the ones that are chlorella, spirella.
Yeah, spirulina, chlorella. Turmeric. Turmeric is great as an anti-inflammatory. I'm just thinking because this morning I make them every morning.
Yeah.
You want to slow digestion a bit and get some healthy fiber. So I put in flaxseed.
Yes.
Either ground or non-ground flaxseed. I put in
matcha powder, I think.
Matcha powder.
Yeah, I'm saying all these names wrong.
Yeah,
so
that's all right.
Yeah.
So I put that in. And the recipe's actually in my book, and you can probably Google it online as well. But it, So I change it up a bit every day. But it's basically fruit, organic vegetables right to the top, filtered water. So I use water, and then the powders that you mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, the thing that I would do prior to meeting you in your book would just be some spinach, a teaspoon of peanut butter, some protein powder, and that was it, right? And then and sometimes I throw in a banana or an avocado. And that was what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that, by the way, because even that is amazing.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So what I started to do different is that I started to add a lot of these things in there. And then I started to actually go in and find out what the heck is spirella powder. Like what am I like? I'm putting this in there. Let me find out what it does.
Yeah, just because Kevin said I should do it, I don't want to. Yeah.
So all the properties of what they can do, and again, I can send some descriptions on the show afterwards. But I started to see energy levels for myself start to spike, like right off the get-go. And that was probably about 2 weeks of doing this, started to spike. So I told you this over the phone a couple of weeks ago. I started to increase my workouts because I have all this energy. I leave work now and I'm like, man, I can do cartwheels. Like, let me just start. So my energy level started to go up. I started to pay a lot of attention through reading your book on sleep, like really focusing on getting that right sleep. I started to put a lot of attention on just looking at my body as like literally, we talked about this, when we look at our vehicles, we want our vehicles to run effectively and efficiently all the time. So we do the oil changes, we do the maintenances, we do all these things. But I don't think as humans, we look at our bodies like that. Like, meaning as in, we just think of it the most simple ways. Eat, sleep, get up. We don't put a lot of attention that it's going to, like, especially when you're young, you're not thinking this stuff.
No, your point's a great one, actually. And that is, and it's even, you're even digging deeper on, pay attention to your health because, your body's your temple. Like this is all we have.
Right.
We've got this body.
Right.
And, I learned the hard way and, that you got to look after it. And so what does that mean as you mentioned is, why do we even eat? It's not for pleasure, although it can be for pleasure. It's to fuel our body.
Right.
Right. So we got to fuel it properly. And that's to your point on the Wilson shake.
Yes.
Like every day, people, I get pictures, I see it on Instagram. People say, just what you're saying. I sleep better. I have more energy. I feel vital just by doing the shake every single day. So you got to fuel your bodies, and then you have to sleep. Right. And it used to be the badge of honor, right? Oh, if I can survive on 4 or 5 hours sleep, I'm doing great as a business owner.
Right.
Now I realize sleep is so important. And most of us don't get adequate sleep. Like as you know, I wear an Oura ring.
So do I.
Yeah, there you go. Worn a Whoop.
Yeah.
I pay really good attention to my sleep. And when it's off, it's usually because I've eaten a late meal or there's been some I skipped my Wilson shake.
Yes.
Right? Something like that. So it's just so important. Like sleep, when I write a blog and when I write on sleep, by far and away the most read blog. So it just shows me that most people have issues with their sleep. So, but back to your point, it's just, we're dealt with this body. We got to look after it, right? Because otherwise it's going to break down.
Absolutely. And, a lot of the stuff that you talk in your book, what I love about it, it's like, it doesn't have to happen all in one big whoosh, meaning as in, bam, tomorrow, all the ingredients in my food are going to be here. The exercise is going to be done. Like you can do it in stages. You talk about the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is to summarize it, if you look at a let's say a week, right? If 80% of your week is eating proper, sleeping proper, or most around eating, I'm assuming like 20% of the time, if you want to indulge in a little something, if you just keep that rule in place, it kind of guides you. Maybe you can speak a little bit more about the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. No, it's just, for me, it's a game changer because the reason diets, in my opinion, and other protocols don't work is because it's all or nothing. Like it's
Right.
100% of the time. Actually, before I came to speak to my last McKay group, I was speaking, I think, the third week of January. So I just for fun Googled, what's the percentage of people that are still abiding by their New Year's resolutions? And this is the third week of January. Guess what the percentage was? Like the percentage that were still on board with their New Year's resolution.
I'm going to say probably less than 10%.
Yeah, it was 12 to 17%.
Wow,
so
okay.
in that range, right? So
But the gyms got their memberships,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. The tourists are there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's so the 80-20 rule, just to summarize, is if we're good 80% of the time, that's good. Like I don't know what you in school, but I wasn't the best student, but if I got an 80, I was happy.
Right.
Right. And that's so you can apply that to everything. Apply it to your food. If you're good in your, as you mentioned, 80% of the time, then that's good. So how in my life, how I incorporate the 80-20 rule is during the week, I really try to pay attention, dial it in like 100%, right? I have my Wilson shake. I have, I'm really careful of what I eat for my meals, everything else. And then my 20% is the weekend, because usually it's social or you're seeing friends. And so you allow yourself to relax, maybe have a few chips while you're watching a movie or that type of thing. But that it gives people permission to go off it a bit and be fine with it.
Right.
Right. And
I'll tell you this right now, like I can't still get by this one thing that you said. In 1999, the journey started, and you said you were 36 years old. I'm not the best at math, but I'm going to probably say you're about 64 right now, 65?
I'm 62 this year. Yeah.
Okay, so my math is off.
A bit.
The fact of the matter that you look to me, that you're like, I'm going to say like 44, 45. It's blowing my mind. Like you're glowing. You like your skin, your everything about you does not indicate that age to me, because I know a lot of people that are 62, 63, and they do not have the look and the feel. But the kicker in all this is your energy levels are through the roof. You're still doing marathons. You're still
triathlons.
Triathlons. Yeah. You're still training actively. Your lifestyle has not changed. In fact, to me, it seems like you keep on elevating.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of it I think is just because I follow my own rules. That's why I wrote that book, Reaching Peak Health in Middle Age. But yeah, when I look at my triathlon times, I think, I compete at the world level. Actually, I just got my uniform because I'm going to Spain this year to compete in the World Championships, which you have to qualify for. But my times, last year were better than 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, and I don't feel any different. Like I actually at 6, when you turn those big numbers, 40, 50, 60, as you know, they're big. And I remember when I was 60, I thought, I don't feel any different. In fact, I feel better than when I was 50, and for sure better than I was 40. So then you fast forward and you say, okay, then why can't I feel that as better or equal at 70, right? So that's my goal now. And one of the, as you know, we do in our company, we do a lot of proactive testing and everything else. But one of the tests that I've had is my biological age, which it measures your telomeres, and it measures, which is the length of the caps on your chromosome. And as you age, those shrink. My arterial health, my brain health, are all the different components that come together. And the last time I had that done, to your point, my biological age came in at 46 years old. So not my chronological, but my biological age. So, my goal is actually to make that number 20 years younger.
Interesting.
So when I'm 80, I want to have the measurements or the vitality or whatever as let's say an average 60-year-old. Right?
This is amazing. Let me ask you this. I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I'll ask you this question. It'll make sense to you. So about 3 weeks ago, like the 14th of January, it just so happens that my mom and dad were born on the exact same day, January 14th.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So we celebrated with them. We took them out to a Greek restaurant. I'm Greek. They wanted to have that Greek vibe. So we went there. As we're sitting down, my dad's 80 and my mom's 77. My dad, he is, I'm going to say to society standard, he's acting like an 80-year-old, slow movements, can obviously have a conversation, but he, I would say frail.
Yeah,
okay?
slowing down.
Slowing down.
Yeah.
As we were eating, I look to my left and I see this gentleman that probably looked about the same age as my dad, maybe a little bit younger. And he was, on this, like a cane, and he was slowly, like you can see every step he took, he was in pain. And I looked at that and I started thinking about you right off the get-go. Started thinking about everything that I've been reading about what do I want when I'm 80? And you just kind of touched upon that right now. It's like, the ability to have a life where you're functioning, where you can have movement, where you can wake up out of bed and have that, that energy or that, I guess whatever that is of vitality, of a younger individual. That is something that I desperately thrive and want right now. At what age? My mom was telling me, she's 77 years old. She goes, but it's too late. I'm telling her about this now. Read this book. But I'm 77, she says. I'm 77. I go, but Mom, you can still walk right now. You're still active. You can still go to the gym. And her mindset was, I'm 77. I'm at the end of my life. Where I'm thinking, you could look at this as just the beginning, right? You said, I think, when you said about how old you want to be, I think you said 125.
Yeah, I've actually moved that to 136.
I love it. I love this. So for someone, like, we talked about where you can look at yourself as middle age, but to me, what I gather from this is that it's not too late to start. You can start right now and start making these changes.
Yeah. You know what? Exactly. It's never too late. It's never too late to be healthy. That's right. That's the title of my book, right? So at any age, you can even just make incremental changes. Let's say you start in having the Wilson shake, or you start changing your diet, or if you're not exercising, just start walking. Like just doing something, you can change things. Like I'll use myself as a perfect example. I mean, when I had that issue, I was on the road to heart disease, and it runs in my family. Genetically, I've had the tests. My dad's family, him and all his brothers died young of heart disease. I'm genetically predisposed to heart disease. When I had the marathon experience and then the issue when I went to the doc with my cholesterol and everything else, I was on the way to a heart attack. I just had my test done before Christmas. I had a calcium score and a CT angiogram. My calcium score came back 0, right? 0. Now, I'm sure if I didn't even have that test like 10 or 20 years ago, I'm sure it was off the charts, right? And same with my CT angiogram. Came back like no plaque, no loose plaque, no soft plaque, which is the one you have to watch. And so, I'll just say you can reverse what you've done to your body. I did it. Right. And you can do that at any age. And so it doesn't matter what you've done before. It's to look forward and say, what can I do today to be healthier? And, to your 80-20 rule, I'm not perfect by any means. And I tell people I try to live healthy, but 80% of the time. Right. And as I said, I still like my chips. I still like my odd glass of red wine. And so I'm still living life. Right.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to be a, hermit and get on this total health thing and not see any friends or anything like that. So it's never too late, I guess, is my message.
Absolutely. But for those that are listening, so usually once a week, I like to cheat and have like one meal, just like go nuts, right? It's been very hard for me to cheat now, because when I start introducing this pollution back into my body, I'm going to call it that. In the moment when I'm eating it, it's good. But then the next morning, I feel like crap. It's like I've been doing such a good job of keeping this temple pure and putting everything into it. And then I introduce it in surges, because now it's like, oh my God, it's my one meal. And maybe the part is that I'm going excessive because I'm not doing the 80-20 rule. But to me, what I started to shift right now is I've started to do the 80-20 rule on my cheat meal, because I know on a Saturday morning when I have mine tonight, if I don't moderate it, I'm going to feel like terrible. And it's not going to be like the psychology, like, it's going to be, I genuinely feel my stomach's bloated. It's hurting because I just put all this nonsense into it.
Yeah, you know what? You that's what happens. I mean, you start looking after your body, and many of us are going through life, as you know, the wheels of health, I talk about that. We don't even know we feel bad, right? Until you feel good. And then it's like I know now, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, Valentine's Day, my wife and I went out to a movie. I had popcorn. I very rarely eat popcorn, but it was Valentine's Day. We had popcorn. I woke up yesterday morning. I felt like a truck hit me. Like seriously, I felt, and even in the middle of the night, I woke up, my stomach was hurting.
Right.
But years ago, if I was eating like that every day, you just don't. You even
wouldn't
notice,
tell. Yeah,
right?
You just live with feeling unwell. I love that. That's actually profound right there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So one of the things about Kevin is that he has a company that he founded, Advica Health, and I think it's very important to bring this up here, because what inspired you to do and build Advica Health, which I want you to speak about, was to kind of like provide services that better your health. Is that a summary of that?
Yeah. So I just to step back a bit. So I was in the employee benefits business for years.
Okay.
So we would come into companies like yours or associations or nonprofits, and I would look after their benefits. So we would look after their health, dental, pension plans. And often when presidents or CEOs or executives or even their employees, when they had health issues that were outside of the norm, they would reach out to me to help them. And I had connections, in the GTA at like MedCan and Cleveland Clinic, and down in the US at Mayo and Duke and Cleveland Clinic down there and Harvard. And so I would just help them get through the system. And it kept happening over and over again. And it was actually one individual customer that's still a customer today that whenever I see him, he half jokingly says, "You saved my life." I actually didn't save his life, but through testing that we arranged for our members of our program, we were able, this is years ago, he was able to determine he had stage 1 kidney cancer. And I don't know if you know anything about kidney cancer, but the unfortunate part about kidney cancer is because the kidneys filters all our blood and everything else. Generally, it shows up as another form of cancer, and it's usually stage 3 or 4, right?
Oh, wow.
And it's fatal,
Okay.
right? Because your kidneys are filtering all your blood and your fluids and everything else. So in his case, through advanced testing, we were able to find out that he had stage 1 kidney cancer. We were able to eradicate it. And it was actually him that gave me the idea. He said, "Kev, if ever you could do what you did for me, detect early detection, but B, then get it solved really quickly and efficiently and get back to work." And, if now 15 years later, he's alive and healthy and living and skiing and everything else. And he said, "I think that'd be a real valuable service to your customers." So I actually did a request for proposals across Canada, and I outlined certain things that I wanted included, like executive medicals, mental health supports, proactive testing, health navigation. There was no one doing it in Canada. So I started a company at the time. It was actually called VIP Health, which you probably don't know. That was the first, and it's actually still the incorporated name of the company.
Okay, nice.
And it just grew because what do people have issues with? Health and getting through the system and proactive testing, and how do I get this appointment instead of waiting 6 months? How do I get it in a month, and that type of thing. So I actually sold my employee benefits business, and now I'm busy growing this business right across Canada with the ultimate goal of helping 1 million Canadians have better health outcomes.
And I'm going to ask you a question because I think it can also speak to some of the services here. In your experience in your readings, do you find that over the last 30 years plus, roughly, do you find that people are struggling? Like there's more health issues that are popping up than they were 30 years ago? Because some of the stuff that I've read and some of the things that I've seen or like watching content indicates that a lot of this stuff is coming from our food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, food or environment. It's actually scary because again, being in the benefits world, I keep track of what the trends are. I mean, so you think of everywhere you go now. I mean, you can get a plant-based burger, you can get vegan, you can get, it's all this health stuff. But as a society, we're actually going the other way. Like for the first time ever last year, the life expectancy went down, right? So every year, because of medical breakthroughs and everything else, life expectancy every year has been going up. Last year, for the first time, has gone down. You look at diabetes rates. Unfortunately, they are, they doubled in the last 5 years. Obesity rates have increased. Mental health issues have increased, right? So I guess what I see around is, and that's why I wrote the book. I mean, I believe so many people truly want to be healthy, but they just don't know how to get there, right? They don't know the things that they should do. And again, that's why I wrote the book, is really simple formula to help people live a healthier life.
Can you share some of those things that you talk about in your book that could lead to making good decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share a few. I mean, in the food or fueling our bodies, non-processed food. So what I call is whole food, plant-based. And I don't call myself a vegan because I'm truly not vegan, and I'm not against animal intake or anything, but for me that works. I feel lighter, I feel better, everything else. So the more you can stay away from processed foods, the better, for sure, from a food standpoint. We've talked a bit about sleep. I mean, your body needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, right? And I used to, again, I didn't pay attention to it. And it's amazing now, to your point earlier, now when I don't get a good sleep, I know. Like I don't even need a Whoop or an Oura.
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
could just,
You just
the
know.
next day I don't
Yeah.
feel good. And it throws everything else off, because if you don't have a good sleep, then you wake up and then you go and then you say, well, maybe I won't have my workout, right? So you
True.
avoid that. Or you have extra coffees,
Yes.
right? Or you reach for sugary foods or not so healthy. Well, guess what? Then tonight you can't sleep well again, right? So it's you have to keep all what I call the wheels of health in balance. So that's sleep super important. And then exercise. I mean, I'm a huge proponent. All I do is read and listen to health podcasts. Whether it's Huberman or Peter Attia. I mean, Peter Attia, he's a proponent of exercise trumps everything else. Like if you do nothing else, just exercise on a daily basis.
Okay.
Right? That's the number one thing. I don't exercise every day, or I don't have a workout every day, but I'll say I exercise every day. Like the days I take off, I might ski,
Right.
or I might put a rucksack on and just go for a nice walk around the neighborhood or that type of thing. And then the last component is just around mental health. And I mean, unfortunately, it's very tough to get mental health support right now in Canada. So, again, one of the services that we've recently introduced is mental health on demand, to allow people to get mental health support right when they need it, right? Instead of like letting things get worse and that type of thing. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I know I've just very high level kind of shared one thing in each of those areas, but again, in my book, I dive more into each of those, as you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you also share in your book, some things that you've done, and they've worked very much so. And one of the things that you talked about, when it really piqued my interest, was the full body scan, right? So it was that and the executive physical. Now, let me tell you about my family doctor. I don't have one. I don't have one because it's almost impossible to get one. And, I have to go to a walk-in clinic and then obviously go through the process. And I feel like the way I feel is like there may be missing things that could be going wrong with me because it's so generic and so robotic. So, when I look at like having an actual physical, I don't really have one. So I was looking at some of the things that you talked about, like having an executive medical, which is 4 to 6 hours of very, very detailed testing. I thought, let me start off with this full body scan. And by the way, for those listening, a full body scan it's an MRI, top to body, top of the head to the bottom.
Full body MRI, so no radiation.
Right.
Again, I'm a proponent of it. How we found that individual that had stage 1 kidney cancer, that's how we found it.
Okay.
Right. So it's a full body MRI. There's no radiation. There's really no risk from medically from having one. Unless, you do have to be careful if you've had any, let's say, implants or pacemaker,
Yes.
but they go through that type of thing. But other than that, it's just basically a full body MRI, and it shows, can shows early signs of cancer and perhaps a stroke waiting to happen, or arterial health. It's a lifesaver. Like
Absolutely.
That one test saves lives.
100%. So both myself and my wife went last Saturday.
Oh, congratulations on that.
We got the scans done, and now we await the results, which again, for us, I want to know this because we're both around the same age. If there is anything there, let's like the purpose is to look inside and see what you can do, right? That's the key.
Yeah, what I always say to people, because I get questioned on this all the time, is why do you do all this advanced testing and everything else? And my simple response is, do you wait for your car to break down before you go get it serviced? No, most of us the service light comes on and we go, oh, we better take it in for service. And there are people, and I respect them, who say, I don't want to know. Like if I have a health issue, I don't want to know. Well, you know what? I'd rather find out that I have stage 1 cancer than stage 4, right? And so anything I can do, and the devices and the tools and everything is exponentially increasing, and the costs are coming way down as well, in order to take advantage of those tests.
That's very interesting. So for anyone listening, again, you can find a lot of this information in Kevin's book, which talks about this. And Advica, which I find that, for someone that is the founder and CEO of Advica, like you always so humbly never really reference what Advica does, because you're always focused on about helping others through just basically information. Can you talk about some of the services that Advica does? Because I think many corporations listening to this and many individuals listening to this can really benefit from this. Because I'm going to say this for myself, I'm now an Advica member based on what it is. And
Right.
and again, for those listening, this is not like, let's whip this in the background and get Kevin on. This is genuinely from my heart what I want to share with others, because I look at it like a lottery. This is how I look at this. If I had the winning numbers to a lottery and I knew this could change someone's life, then this is how I look at this. This is something that can save someone's life, preserve someone's life, and again, bring that longevity. So I feel like sharing some of this stuff, Kevin, is very impactful for those listening. They can simply go to your website, which they can, and I've seen, and you got a blog, and you got everything. You're very, very intuitive on these things. Can you maybe just share some of the stuff that you guys do in there with that?
So in a nutshell, we help people navigate through the health system, right? So I'm sure you've been through it. We've all been through health challenges in our life, and generally, especially if it's serious, I call it angst. It's like, where do I go? Who do I see? How do I get there? Do I know a doctor that may be able to help me, or a friend? That's what the reason we named the company Advica Health is we are advocates for your health. Mm-hmm. So what I always say is what we do really well, we put our arm around people and help guide them through the system with the very best options, right? Based on our network of over 1,000 specialists we deal with in Canada, US, worldwide. So instead of you kind of going through whatever that health journey is on your own, we've got your back, right? And we know the best resources in the public system. If people want private, we know the best private. And, every day we're helping people. It actually gives me a lot of pride because we're helping people get the very best health solutions. And even it's sad, yesterday morning I got an email from a member whose spouse was just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So that's sad because generally when people are diagnosed with something like, especially pancreatic cancer, you don't even know you have it till stage 4. What you talked about when the body scan, you're going to catch that in stage 1 or 2.
How with the age of usually when people find these things out, what age are they happening? It's because it seems like cancer right now is all over the place.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it's happening at younger, and we're noticing an increased incidence of brain cancers, unfortunately, which could be phones, EMFs, everything else that we're doing to ourselves, I'll call it. But generally, I mean, what happens is as we age, we can't fight off these things the way we could when we were young. That's really what's happening. So generally, it's age. You generally are getting these things as you get older, would be the norm.
Is there like any studies that you know of that where they say these are age? Because you're talking in your book about like how to like in the middle age kind of element. When should someone really be looking at it? Like I'm 46, and I feel like now. I've heard already from some people, like this is a great age to kind of just jump into. Like if someone's like 25, 26 years old, should they be looking at these kind of things the same way?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the earlier the better. Like
okay.
For me, I mean, it was kind of late 40s, early 50s till I really dialed it in, only because I had those wake up calls. But the younger the better. Like it's been shown that you start when they even have, let's say somebody dies of other causes, and then they do an autopsy on their heart and they're like 14 or 15 or 18, it's already showing signs of buildup of plaque in the arteries, right? So It's from a super young age. So the younger the better. Like I know for our children, all of them, we've, when they graduated and started working, we sent them all for executive medicals, and now they're working and have their own businesses and companies, and they're continuing on their own, I'll say, health journey themselves. So it's never too young. You want to know. And let's say you're 30 and everything comes back perfect. Well, that's great. Let's keep it perfect, right? Like why, so my point is we don't just, we look at age as normal. If I relate back to my executive medical, when I had, high cholesterol and high blood pressure, the other thing that stuck out that the doc said to me, he said, Kev, it's normal. And I said, what do you mean it's normal? He says, you're in your 40s. Of course you have high cholesterol and high blood pressure and your sugar levels are high. Like it was like that was the norm.
Right.
And for me, it was like, no, that's not, like that can't be if that's the norm, that's sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So so it's never too late to get started, but it's never too young to dial into this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about like obviously being very aware of the food that you put in your system, obviously about exercise. And obviously we talked about like the supplements and stuff that you'd make in your food, right? In your shakes. There's the whole vitamin world, right? And for me, this is a new world for me right now because outside of taking like a couple of vitamins, I've also heard like elements where like sometimes certain vitamins that you're taking, they really don't do nothing, right? Any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people that every time I'd read vitamin B is good for me, so I'd start taking vitamin B and then vitamin C and then vitamin D. And, part of our program is we're proacting on these things. So my first recommendation to anybody is get proper testing done to a gold standard nutritionist, right? So part of our service is we will link you with what we consider gold standard nutritionists. And then get proper testing done. So when I had that testing done, she threw half my vitamins out.
Wow.
Because she said, you know what, Kevin, you're having the Wilson shake every morning. You don't need vitamin C. You don't need this. But, one test that from the nutritionist that came through loud and clear is I don't methylate well. And what that means is I don't absorb nutrients, or I don't absorb like things like magnesium or potassium very well. So, which is part of the reason that I had that coma, went into the coma at the marathon, because I wasn't absorbing the nutrients and minerals that I needed to. So now for me, anyhow, I have to take a substantial amount of vitamin B, because that's helps my methylation process.
Okay.
So again, it's not one size fits all. And if you even look at our mission, it's personalized health and expert access. So it's one thing to get access quick, but quick isn't necessarily good. You want quick, but you also want the best.
Okay.
Right? And personalized. Those are kind of the three words that really stick out for me when I look at what our mission statement says. It's personalized healthcare and expert healthcare and expedited healthcare. Those three.
And that's so important. And my experience again with Advica Health is that being also now a member, I feel like there's more attention given to me and what I need for myself. Again, my experience with my family doctor is, which I don't have one. I just called him that because that's what else I'm going to call him a walking clinic doctor, is that it's very cold, and I feel sometimes I could leave and not get that attention. My experience has been very different, utilizing some of the services through Advica Health. And for myself, when I look right now at the situation in Canada, and we always talk about this, like obviously the US has a different setup. It seems like I don't want to come across in any sort of judgmental way, but it just seems like it's you're not being cared the way you should be cared. If the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a resource thing. I don't know if that's a financial thing. I have no idea where it comes down to. But it's scary if you have something wrong with you and it's not being looked at the way it should be looked at.
Yeah. No, and I just think it's a resource. I mean, growing population, less resources. And I mean, you read about it every day, right? The wait times. I mean, the average wait time through the Fraser Institute right now, average in Canada, wait time until you get diagnosed, until you get treatment is 26 weeks, 26.5 weeks. That's half a year. Like,
and a lot can happen in 26 weeks.
Yeah, half a year.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's just a reflection, unfortunately, of our what we're living in. That's just real data. So, anything you can do to expedite that, to help get through quicker, sooner. And as I said earlier, I mean, we're a proponent of the public system. Mm-hmm. We just know how. It's our job to know how to get through and get people the best service and get them to the right specialist.
Okay.
Like, people might jump and say, oh, I need to see this type of specialist. But our nurse navigation team will then ask a bunch of questions, as you've likely been through, and maybe direct you somewhere else, like a nutritionist or maybe a fitness coach or something, that based on your symptoms or what you're putting forth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Kevin, I really enjoyed your book, and I understand you're also working on another one. Do you want to share anything about that, or is that too much of a sneak peek?
No, this book is kind of my own simple version of what I did to change my health around. But now everything I'm focusing on now, and we are as a company, actually, we're also focusing a lot on longevity and anti-aging, which I know obviously from our conversation you're very interested in. And that is, as I said, I mean, there's lifespan, which is how long we live, but there's health span, and health span is how long we live healthily. Right. And ultimately we want, as I said when we started out, we want to live like the blue zones, right? Where we're living and we're exuberant and we're vital and we're enjoying life up until, the last week or 2 weeks, or, I mean, if you could write your script, that's what you would write. Right. So my next book is going to be, I've just done so much research and reading and everything else in terms of longevity and anti-aging. So my next book will be on that. I'm not committing to a time frame because that book alone, if you've ever written a book, and those authors out there, it's always a way bigger ordeal than you think. That book actually from start to finish, it's never too late to be healthy. Took me 4 years from start to finish.
Right.
So I'm not committing on a time, but I've already put an outline down, and I'm hoping within a couple of years we can get something out. And actually on that because we have so many of our members that don't just want to wait for a health issue like yourself, they want to proact. We're actually building, and we're soon to launch an anti-aging program, a longevity program.
Oh, wow, I love that.
That would include some of the testing you're talking about, like, the full body scan. One of the things I talked about at your forum was the food sensitivity or food inflammation test. Right. So we're going to build some of those things into a program that make it really simple for people, because then instead of them trying to figure out which tests do I want to get, it will all be packaged up for you.
Fantastic. Yeah. How does somebody find this book?
Yeah, so the book, you can Google it online. So it's Never Too Late to Be Healthy. You can Google it online, or you can go into our website at Advica Health. And our website, for those that want it, is just simply advicahealth.com.
Okay.
Right?
I love that. So we're going to put those on the lower thirds. Kevin, as we close, if there's one thing that you want to share that you think a takeaway, just a takeaway from what we talked about today, or something that maybe we haven't talked about, just anything that you think that someone can find immense value on, share that. What you shared in that forum group was, for me, as we like to call it in the McKay forum group, game changers. It was for me a big game changer. And now I feel like I'm almost like your disciple now, and I'm sharing like the news to all, because it means so much to me, and I feel that because of that connection, it should mean so much to others as well. Anything that you'd like to share? Anything at all?
My biggest one is just really simply my lesson. Don't take your health for granted. We have nothing more important than our health. Like, it's our biggest asset. Like, if we don't have our health, you're not vital, you're not living, you're struggling, because people often say to me, or some people say, well, if I work out every day, people think I'm selfish, right? And I say, no, it's actually the opposite. You're selfless. Because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after your employees, you can't look after your coworkers, you can't look after your family, you can't look after your wife, right? So you need, look after the temple, man, because you look after that temple, if you treat it well, it will treat you well.
Absolutely. And I know, because obviously, Tim, that you're also like a grandfather.
Yes.
So imagine those kids, man, having like your nephews and your nieces, and your grandchildren, having the ability to be able to be mobile and play with them. And that's the part, like, these are the things that I see, like, that are so important, like being able to be able, you know what I mean? To have that ability to be movement free. And anyways, these are things that I look at. And I think, Kevin, your book has been a very big inspiration. I highly recommend those of you that have found any value to this today to definitely read that book. And it'll start doing what I say, open up the Pandora's box. Because I know you talked about Rich Roll.
Rich Roll.
I've actually listened to some of his podcasts as well, because I remember I heard that
he was a game changer for me.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had him come and speak in my hometown, Burlington, 10 years ago now, and he couldn't believe it, because we sold out the theater.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, and it was on a Wednesday morning. He said, who's going to come and hear me on a Wednesday morning, right? Because he was just getting started himself, and we filled the place, right?
Wow.
So yeah, he's one of my faves. He's been to my house, and I listen to all his podcasts. He's awesome.
Amazing. And you also, by the way, do podcasts and blogs as well, right?
Yes, I do blogs. I've got away from it a bit just because I've been so busy lately, but my goal is to get back to writing them. I was writing them on a bi-weekly basis.
Okay.
And I have done some podcasts, and I'm a guest on a number of podcasts as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, Kevin, I want to thank you for coming to the show today. I found major value. You've actually inspired me to just start running. As soon as we finish, I'm going to start running around the building.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And everyone, just stay safe. And just as Kevin said, do not take your health for granted. It's the only thing that gives you life to wake up every morning.
Awesome.
Have a great one, everyone. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me in today's podcast. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, executive protection, security, and anyone looking to level up their mindset. If you are learning from this podcast and you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Sentinel Mindset. That's a zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast both on Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast or guests you would like me to consider on the Sentinel Mindset, please post all comments on YouTube. I do read all the comments. Please also check out our sponsors, thearenatoronto.com. The Arena was created to help all those in the fields of law enforcement, security, and all that achieve their fitness goals. I want to thank our producer, Matthew Doyle, and creative supports, Jaslene Singh, who help me with this podcast every week. We value your feedback and are here to support you. Tune into the Sentinel Mindset every week where we look in the mirror to make real changes and explore what it takes to achieve greatness in your craft.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.